So thank you all very much for attending today. I'm most blessed to be on this thread with you all. It's an inspiration to see so many people from so many different countries tuning in today to this auspicious topic, most auspicious topic. So I'm just going to head right in now. Om Agnati Mirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Guruve Gauda Chandraya Radhikaya Tadavaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha Anapita Chirim Chirat Karuna Varatino Kalo Samaravaitam Unnata Ujjvala Rasam Sva Bhakti Shriyam Hari Purata Sundaratu Katamba Sandapita Sada Hridare Kandare Sparatu Vasachi Nandanaha Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritya Hladini Shakti Asmad Ekatmanava Pibuvi Deha Vedam Gatoto Chaitanyayakam Prakatam Adanat Tadvayam Chekamatam Radha Bhav Dudisavalitam Nomi Krishna Swarupam Shiradaya Pranaya Mahima Kidrishovanaiva Svadyena Budam Madhurima Kidrishova Madhya Sokyam Kasyam Mad Anubhavita Kidrisham Vedigobat Tadbhavadya Samajini No Shiradaya Pranaya Mahika. Where does that last line go? Radha Bhav Suvalitam Nomi Krishna Swarupam. So I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat Pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Bhaktivedanta Tridandi, Srila Narayan Gosvami Maharaj, and to our most beloved Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams to you all. So today is Nijala Ekadashi, so forgive me if I trip up somewhere. It's always fun speaking on Ekadashi. What does Ekadashi mean? It means fasting, but it means running very fast to Krishna. This is really what fasting is about today. So this is Nijala Ekadashi, special Ekadashi. And my session with you has just dropped in to the most auspicious week ahead of us. We have the Panihati Festival Mahotsav celebration on Wednesday. It's Purnima. And we have the disappearance day of Mukunda Datta, and we have Syamananda Prabhu. I think it's also disappearance day of these two. If someone can correct me, is that correct? Is it disappearance days or appearance days? Yadav, check.
It's disappearance days.
Disappearance days, okay. So we live in a world really amongst the saints. We're always taking and depending on their shelter for every step of our lives, really and truly. So to celebrate each individual appearance and disappearance day of these incredible personalities is a great strength for our progress in devotion to the Lord. So really, we have to consider who these saints are. Why are we celebrating them so consistently throughout the year? And they are all utterly sold out servants of Sachinandan Mahaprabhu. They all came with a mission. They came to support his mission, which ultimately is the mission of Sri Radhika. Sri Radhika wants Mahaprabhu to experience her emotional feelings towards him. This is Krishna's desire. I said these three verses at the beginning. These three verses are pivotal to appreciating the identity of Mahaprabhu. This verse 4, 5, and 6 from the Adi Leela, chapter 1. And 4 and 5 and 6 rather are spoken by Swarup Damodar. So we celebrate his disappearance day also on the Rath Yatra day. So all of these personalities have come to assist Krishna, Mahaprabhu, to give us the highest conception known to man. Krishna has come previously in many, many avatars, we understand, but he's never come before to inject bhakti ras, to give us the opportunity for bhakti ras, braja prem. So this is not an easy task. Krishna has all the goods, so to speak. He has all the beauty and sweetness and potency. But how is he going to be able to impart this in the heart of the Jivas? Why is it so difficult for the Jivas to accept Mahaprabhu? Because we have our independence. We have our independent spirit. So Krishna comes with a mission, but he's not sure that it's 100% going to happen because we have our independence. How can it be assured that it'll happen? If he was assured it was going to happen, then where would the meaning of our independence be? We have the choice to accept these teachings or not. We have the choice every day to accept them. So these immense personalities, they come to support Mahaprabhu putting this mission into the world. It's not a small task at all. Really and truly, if we think about it, the conditioned soul is so much concerned with his own conditioned pleasures that he's been going through perhaps for billions of lifetimes. How is he suddenly going to be attracted to the spiritual world? This is not an easy task. So the greatest devotees, those sold out servants of Srimati Radhika, they are the ones who come to assist Mahaprabhu, principally Rupa Goswami. Without Rupa Goswami, none of our teachings would be clarified for us. Rupa Goswami has taken the teachings from Mahaprabhu and he's been empowered to withstand the separation moods. Shukadev Goswami could not even speak the name Radhika in the entire Bhagavatam. Otherwise, he would go into a trance for 5 or 6 days. Swarup Damodar, he didn't also speak these truths in the world. As Lalita Devi, Vishaka Devi, Rai Ramananda, he spoke something at the Godavari, and he speaks something as well in his Jagannath Nata Ashtakam, this beautiful drama of Lord Jagannath. But he doesn't open it out entirely. This gift of Mahaprabhu is so extraordinary. It's not just bhakti. It's not just devotion to the Lord. It's something much, much, much more special than this. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela chapter 4, Krishna says, let me quote this directly. He says, Krishna thought, all the universe is filled with the conception of my majesty, but love weakened by that sense of majesty does not satisfy me. This is text 17 of Adi Leela, chapter 4. And then in 18, he said, if one regards me as the Supreme Lord and himself as a subordinate, I do not become subservient to his love, nor can it control me. So what is the nature of this remarkable gift that Mahaprabhu is giving? It's a condition of the heart, of consciousness, without the imposition of opulence towards Krishna. We heard just yesterday was the disappearance day of Baladev Vidyabhushan. We heard how he had to go to Jaipur to manifest his bhasya to convince the smarters and the various Ramanuja followers to have Sri Radhika on the altar with Govinda. They couldn't even accept it at that time. So try to understand how difficult it is to actually give this gift into the world. It's not a small thing. The people of India, for example, they followed very respectfully for thousands and thousands of years that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. We have huge, huge temples in Sri Rangam, for example. So many temples throughout India with just Krishna on the altar. Venkateshwara, for example, in South India. So we have so much opulence is there in the worship. How can those personalities just accept the nature of Parakiya Ras, that their Supreme Lord actually has a paramour relationship with the gopis, in principle with Sri Radhika? Very difficult. So these personalities that we glorify throughout the year, and particularly this week, we're glorifying Raghunata dasa Gosvami, Mukunda Datta, Sridhara Pandit, or Kolavecha Sridhar, and Syamananda. These four personalities are manifesting their disappearance pastimes in this coming week. So when we consider these incredible stalwart saints and personalities, and if we remember their pastimes with great affection and great respect and love on their particular days, then great mercy can be received from those personalities without a doubt. On their disappearance and appearance days, there's a special window that's opened from that spiritual world where they can infuse the jiva who remembers their teachings with special potency coming from them individually. So first of all, this week on Wednesday, we're celebrating Raghunata dasa. Raghunata dasa is coming directly from the spiritual world to assist Mahaprabhu in putting these teachings into the world. When we see historically, Mahaprabhu manifested his pastimes principally, or his preaching pastimes, from 1510 in Puri Dham. This is when he began himself. He entered the renounced order in 1510 at the age of 24, and then he traveled throughout South India for 2.5 years. Then he traveled north, then he traveled to Vrindavan. It was a total of 6 years that he was actually traveling. And during that time, he was distributing his message. But how can the message take root without these parikas to fan the flames of the teachings? So Rupa Goswami is the principal, as I've already said. And Raghunata dasa is a great stalwart who's supporting, and he took shelter of Swarup Damodar for 14 or 15 years in Puri itself. Swarup Damodar, we know, is Lalita Devi. So when Raghunath, he grew up in a place near Panihati, which is just north of Calcutta. His place is there. You can go there today. You can visit the place of his birth. And his father, Govardhan Majumdar, and his uncle, Hiranya Majumdar, were the most wealthy landowners and tax collectors in that area, working for the Muslim government. And they had a phenomenal income each year. So Raghunath grew up in the greatest material opulence. And he wasn't attracted a single pinch to it. because when he was very young, when he was about 10 years old, his family guru, we can say, who is Yadunandan Acharya. Yadunandan Acharya is a disciple and follower of Advaita Acharya. So this is how qualified is their family guru. They also had a family priest called Balaram, who was very much attracted to Advaita Acharya also. So this is the world where Raghunata Das was born into. And when he was about 10 years old, Haridas Thakur came to visit Yadunandan Acharya, and young Raghunata Das at that time, he had darshan of Haridas Thakur. So at that time, Srila Gurudev, my Gurudev, Bhaktivedanta Tridandi Maharaja, he tells us that that is when the seed of renunciation manifested, because all of these truths have to be given to us. They have to be bestowed upon us by these different personalities. Guru in particular, Guru will pass that current of bhakti into the heart of the Shishya. This is our process. You can't get it from a book, so to speak. So Raghunata Das, he received this seed of renunciation, pure renunciation, yukta vairagya, from Haridas Thakur directly. And then he began to develop a great desire to go to Puri and to be with Mahaprabhu. He was younger than Mahaprabhu. He's about 6 years younger than Mahaprabhu. And he very much wanted to go to Jagannath Puri and take part in Mahaprabhu's pastimes there. But his father and uncle definitely didn't want him to go. They didn't want him to go in that direction in life, because he was the sole heir to their huge property. A wealthy person, they're always trying to think, where will I leave my wealth when I leave my body? So they were very much concerned that they wanted to cultivate Raghunath to take their little kingdom, so to speak, of all their wealth. They had no one else. He was the only one. So they were very attached to keeping him in family life and in a business mentality. But Raghunath had already been touched by Haridas. And Raghunath, as we know, he's coming from that spiritual world. Internally, he's Rati Manjari, or he's Rasa Manjari. He's described as both names. So Raghunata Das was trying to run away all the time from his home. And each time his father sent out soldiers and expert runners, and they would catch him and bring him back again. But his heart was very impatient and aggrieved, because he had no attraction whatsoever to this material opulence that he found himself in. He found it completely distasteful, in fact. And one time Mahaprabhu, he came to Shantipur, and Raghunata Das was able to actually have his darshan at that time. His father allowed him to go with many soldiers, etc. And at that time, Mahaprabhu, he instructs young Raghunath to be patient and to act out the part of a pounds, shillings, and pence man. Our Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada terms it, and not behave like a madman. And then this will make his father, etc., feel secure about him, and he'll ease his guard, etc. So Raghunath takes this instruction from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to heart, and he still very much wants to go to Puri, but he returns to his place near Panihati, and then he begins acting like a regular businessman. In fact, in so much degree that when the Muslim tax collectors, who had become very envious of Govardhan Majumdar's and Haranya Majumdar's wealth, they wanted to report that he had stolen money, that his father and uncle had stolen money. So the Turkish soldiers were going to come and imprison them. So Govardhan, and someone's got their microphone open. If you can check on your microphones. Or Manjalali, are you able to close everyone's microphone? Okay. So they ran away, leaving just Raghunath there. And then the Turkish official came, and Raghunath, by his gifted expertise, somewhat like Rupa and Sanatan when they worked for the Muslims. When they worked for the Muslims, they were very expert at diplomacy simultaneously to being great devotees. So Raghunath was able to pacify this Turkish inspector very nicely, and the whole pastime is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And the Turkish collector, he just asks for a bribe, basically. So this is, you know, Indian culture. So then Raghunath, he arranges for that, and everything is pacified. So his father and uncle became somewhat less fearful of him escaping. They even supplied him with a most wonderful wife. Gurudev often refers to her as Miss Universe, but still this could not bind his heart to these family matters at all. And then by the greatest fortune, Nityananda Prabhu had come from Puri to Panihati. Now, as I was describing something of the history, that Mahaprabhu is spreading his mission in Puri and locally in that area. And he was always sending Nityananda and other parikars to Bengal to speak and preach his mission here in Bengal. And Nityananda, he took up residence in Panihati at the house of Raghava Pandit. Raghava Pandit is Danishta Sakhi in Braj Leela. So Raghava Pandit is a great exalted personality. And Nityananda is staying there. And young Raghunath, he found that out. He found out that Nityananda is there in Panihati, close by. Panihati, by the way, is about 15, 16 miles north of Calcutta. It's not very far from Calcutta today. It's just north in the Hooghly district. And so Raghunath, he convinced his father to be able to go and visit Nityananda Prabhu. So then he receives the mercy of Nityananda Prabhu at that time in Panihati. And this is the festival that we're going to be celebrating on Wednesday, this very famous Panihati festival, or this Chida Dahi festival, this yogurt and bananas and flat rice preparations, very simple preparations, but very tasty when they're mixed nicely together with condensed milk, etc. So Raghunath, he comes into the place where Nityananda is residing, but he offers his obeisances from a distance. He's afraid, he's shy. Nityananda, Abadut, is a greatly powerful personality. So somebody whispers in Nityananda's ear, oh, here is Raghunata dasa. He's offering you obeisances right over there. So then Nityananda, he calls him close by and he accuses him of being like a thief. Why is he offering obeisances from in the distance? He should come up close and offer his respects fearlessly in front of him. So Nityananda at that time, he says, I'm going to punish you for this offense that you have made by offering your obeisances from a distance. You have to feed myself and all my followers who are here. There were thousands of people following Nityananda at that time. Nityananda Avadut was so popular at that time in Bengal. So Raghunata dasa is very, very happy, and he purchases all the goods, etc. And all the preparations are made and so on. And then it's described extensively by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj, this beautiful festival that takes place right on the bank of the Ganga, where these preparations, very simple preparations, are all put into bowls, etc., and fed to all the people who are coming there with Nityananda Prabhu. Many, many Brahmins, many Vaishyas, many Vaishnavas, many thousands of people came. It's described it was so crowded that people actually had to sit in the Ganga to honor their preparations. And a most beautiful pastime occurred at this time, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he saw the happiness and the beauty and sweetness of this festival, he appeared also. And it's described how Nityananda is actually feeding Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his subtle form. Mahaprabhu has manifested from Puri, and he's come in his subtle form, and he's dancing with Nityananda Prabhu, and Nityananda is feeding directly Mahaprabhu. And Raghunata dasa is witness to this. This is phenomenal. This is like in another dimension. But Raghunata dasa is witnessing this. And this is his greatest fortune. So it's described principally that by this connection with Nityananda, that very soon after this, Raghunath is able to escape fully the clutches of his material life. And this is another beautiful pastime where Yadunandan, the family priest or his family guru, comes early one morning and says that the pujari is not able to perform his work in the temple. I must go to his place and I must wake him or tell him, find out what's the problem. And Raghunath at that time, he says, no, don't worry. I'll go and inform the pujari and he'll come to you. So then he goes across the fields. At this time, the guards, they're not with him. It's too early in the morning and all the guards have been relaxed. So he goes across the fields and he suddenly realized, this is my opportunity. And he runs for 10 days. He takes all the backtracks and reaches Puridam and comes into the assembly directly of Mahaprabhu in quite a disheveled, ragged, skinny condition. And Mahaprabhu is so happy to see him. And he remarks at that time, you have been living in a stool pit of material wealth, and now you've given that up. This is very good. So Raghunath has escaped now. And then at this time, Mahaprabhu puts Raghunath into the hands of Swarup Damodar. So for the next 14 years, Raghunata dasa is hearing directly from Swarup Damodar. It's described that he doesn't interact so much with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he's younger. And he takes all his nourishment directly from Swarup Damodar. And Swarup Damodar is also revealing to Mahaprabhu the activities, etc., of Raghunath. So Raghunath is like completely in touch with Mahaprabhu. So I'm telling all this pastime to glorify Raghunata dasa, because as I said at the beginning, to see it in its historic context, that Mahaprabhu wants to give this incredible gift to the world. How is it going to manifest in the world except through these parikars? So the example of Raghunath's life is very inspirational for the sadhaks to appreciate now how to perform this sadhan bhajan to attain this gift that Mahaprabhu wants to give, this gift of Braja Prem. How to perform this sadhan. We have to take examples, we have to take inspiration from these exemplary personalities that are coming directly from Sri Radhika. I'm just looking for somebody who has a video on, because otherwise I'm just looking in the mirror, talking to myself here. I would love to be looking at someone live. Does anybody want to open up the, oh, okay. I got some live there, okay. Hare Krishna, I got Uragai and Taruni and Yadav, okay. So, yes, trying to link these personalities to the historic context of their supporting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, not just exclusively about the personality, but about their seva to Mahaprabhu and how they supported Mahaprabhu's mission in this world. Do you understand what I'm saying? How to see it in this context simultaneously. So Raghunata dasa, he was with Swarup Damodar for this whole time, 14 years. Swarup Damodar is such an immensely powerful personality. He is with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu the whole time. He's in the Gambhira, in the most esoteric condition of Mahaprabhu's tasting this Mohan Akya Mahabhav, these phenomenal Sattvika bhavs were blazing in the heart of Mahaprabhu. We cannot comprehend them. They are so extraordinary. Achintya for the conditioned jiva. And Swarup Damodar was there the entire time with Rai Ramananda. Vishaka and Lalita are there. And of course, simultaneously, Raghunath is seeing and associating sometimes with Gadadhar, who is directly Sri Radhika. So this is the sort of association that Raghunath is experiencing. And as soon as Raghunath arrived in Vrindavan, he desired, because of this seed from Haridas Thakur, to not accept any money, etc., from his wealthy father and uncle. His uncle was trying to send money to him. His uncle and father were still hopeful that Raghunath would return. But Raghunath was fixed in his renunciation, his nishta. And initially, he was using that money to invite Mahaprabhu. Every couple of weeks, he would invite Mahaprabhu and feed him very nicely, and the different Vaishnavas with the money that he'd been sent by his father. But after a while, Raghunath felt that was distasteful. He didn't want to do that. So then he gave up that practice and told the people who are bringing the money from his father to please take that money back. He didn't want it. And he instead started begging at the Singadvaha gate. In Puri, there's one particular gate where the devotees always go, where there's a huge stamba of Garuda. And we can offer our obeisances there today, because Westerners are not allowed in the temple, of course. So it was at that gate that Raghunath would beg daily for his sustenance. And when Mahaprabhu found out this, he was very, very happy. He was very pleased that Raghunath was performing his Madhukari like this. But then after some time, Raghunath became dissatisfied with this. He was thinking, I saw this man yesterday, and I'm hoping he's going to give me something today, etc., etc. And there was some material contamination coming into his consciousness in the way that he was collecting his Madhukari. So he gave up that practice, and then he began taking from the free food booth that is there. So when he gave up that practice of begging, Mahaprabhu became even more pleased. And then finally, he gives up even that free food booth. He thinks that that is not sufficiently pure or honest for his livelihood. And then he starts taking the rice that has even been rejected by the cows at the Tarangila Gate. This gate in, there's 4 main gates into the sanctum, so to speak, of the Jagannath Mandir. And in one of these gates, all the refuse rice is dumped. And whatever the cows left behind, Raghunath would take some handfuls of that rice, wash it very carefully, and then eat it with salt. So when Mahaprabhu found out this, he was so overjoyed that Raghunath was practically not even touching the contaminated material energy, so to speak, at all. He was in such a renounced condition of consciousness. And then he ran, Mahaprabhu ran to the place where Raghunath was staying and was taking this rice. And he grabbed a handful of this rice and he demanded, Raghunath, why are you taking such nectar and you're not offering me any? And with that, he put this handful of rice into his mouth. And then as he was going to take another handful, Swarup Damodar Goswami stopped him. No, 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 you have taken sufficient. You cannot take any more than this. Any more than this, and Raghunath's fortune will be overwhelmed. Just exactly like Sudama Brahmachari, when he had the chip rice and went to Dwarka. Rukmini, she stopped him from taking more of that chip rice from Sudama Brahmana, the same type of pastime. So this type of renunciation is what Raghunath Das exhibited when he was living in Puri. And at this time, of course, he was absorbing all the most esoteric teachings that Mahaprabhu had come to manifest. I described previously about Rupa Goswami, what he gave. He gave directly the Abhideya Tattva. He gave us how to practice Mahaprabhu's instructions and teachings, how to, what is Bhav Bhakti, what is Prema Bhakti, etc. He defined it all in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He defined it all in Ujjvala Nilamani. He defined all these very esoteric Rasik, the Rasik path, so to speak, that the Vaishnava must follow. But he wasn't exemplifying it in his own life the same way that Raghunath does. So see the distinction here. Raghunath, when Mahaprabhu leaves this world, he becomes so forlorn, he runs to Vrindavan with the intention of jumping off Govardhan Hill. And I've often considered this, which part of Govardhan Hill would he jump off? Because today it's very small Govardhan Hill. It's not more than 50 or 60 feet at its highest. So it proves that in those times it was much bigger. Raghunath was convinced that he would leave his life if he jumped off. I think in the south, in Pucheri, if we come onto the south end of the Parikrama, it's the highest. Perhaps Raghunath was going to jump off there. But anyway, Rupa and Sanatan, they stopped him from even thinking like that and told him to go to Radhakund. And then for the next 40 years, he lives in Radhakund. So he has 14 years in Puri and 40 years in Radhakund. And what is he doing in Radhakund? He's just rolling on the bank of Radhakund in great anguish of separation. And sometimes he's going into, it's called Antardesh, when he goes into these highest states of consciousness, where he's no longer Raghunath Das, where he's actually Tulsi Manjari or Rati Manjari. And he's serving directly his Swamini Sri Radhika in trance. So this is the gift, the real gift that Raghunath is giving to us. And we're celebrating his disappearance day on Wednesday. What is it, Yadav? Appearance day?
Only the festival, Maharaj, only the festival.
Only the festival. Okay, thank you. But we're remembering in context with the festival, it was because of the festival that he was able to get the mercy of Nityananda Prabhu. And because of Nityananda's mercy, he was able to go to Puri and remaining there and then coming to Radhakund. But just to appreciate this personality, because this Panihati festival revolves around the beauty and speciality of Raghunath Das, who he is, and who he is in connection with Mahaprabhu. So we take great inspiration from Raghunath Das. Raghunath Das, he's given us this beautiful collection, this bouquet of lamentations. It's called Vilap Kusumanjali. And we're so blessed that our Gurudev, Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, has given us a tika, a commentary on this Vilap Kusumanjali. And this is practically the only book that we have that is describing directly the activities of the manjaris. What do they do? What is the meditation of the manjaris? So this beautiful collection is what Raghunath Das has bestowed to us. And it's all in connection with Mahaprabhu's endeavor to inject this Braja Prem into the world. So this is something of the glories of Raghunath. Raghunath Das's glories are endless. And perhaps when we have just a single time, we've already gone through 3/4 of the class, but so anyway, that's something about Raghunath Das for our contemplation, and to see him in connection with Rupa Goswami, because at the end of every chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna's Kaviraj, he's glorifying Rupa and Raghunath. So these two personalities are integrally linked. Rupa is the Abhideya Acharya and Raghunath is the Prayojana Acharya, because Raghunath is demonstrating the life of a manjari in complete detachment from this material world. Total detachment. We can't comprehend his extent of his detachment. So this is something of Raghunath Das. And then on Thursday, it's the disappearance day of Mukunda Datta. Mukunda Datta, there's two Mukundas. Don't get them confused. There's Mukunda Datta and Mukunda das. Mukunda das is that physician who was serving the king and saw the beautiful peacock feather and fell off the place that he was sitting onto the ground in ecstasy when he remembered Krishna. So that is Mukunda das. And Mukunda das, his son is Raghunandan. He's from Srikand, which is like in the middle of Bengal, just south of Navadvip. Srikand is a very famous place. His brother is Narahari Sakar. This is Mukunda das. And then there's Mukunda Datta and Vasudev Datta. They're two brothers. So Mukunda Datta and Vasudev Datta, these originally were singers in Vrindavan. This is Madhukanta and Madhubrat. They were both singers in Vrindavan. And in Mahaprabhu's pastimes, Mukunda in particular, Mukunda Datta, he stays with Mahaprabhu practically the whole time Mahaprabhu is in Puri. And also he was with Mahaprabhu, of course, in Navadvip. He's actually a schoolmate of Mahaprabhu. He was in school at the same time with Mahaprabhu. So he's with Mahaprabhu the whole way through, Mukunda Datta. So he's an extraordinary personality. Indeed, extraordinary personality. We don't have a lot of information about him, but we can appreciate his immense seva and support that he offered to Mahaprabhu, particularly in his singing, in his kirtan. He would always know exactly the right kirtan to sing to inspire Mahaprabhu and all the people at the time. So there's a particular famous story that I'm sure you all remember when Mukunda Datta, because he was such a exceptionally sweet personality, he would be very friendly with many different groups of people. Everyone loved him. He was like a pure singer, pure musician. Everyone loved him. And sometimes he would be in the company of even Mayavads and singing for them, Krishna bhajans, of course. So Mahaprabhu, during his Sat Praharya pastimes, these 18 hours continuous, 21 hours continuous kirtan, he was passing many benedictions to the Vaishnavas at that time. And Mukunda Datta was waiting outside to hear himself be called inside. And Mahaprabhu wasn't calling him. And then the devotees, they inquire from Mahaprabhu, why are you not calling for Mukunda Datta? And Mahaprabhu says, no, he is an offender. He will go wherever anybody is and not discriminate between who is a Vaishnava or who is not a Vaishnava like that. Mahaprabhu was making this test for Mukunda Datta directly. And Mukunda Datta, and then Mahaprabhu is saying, no, he cannot come in to our assembly just now. And Mukunda Datta is mortified when he hears this. And then Mukunda asks, will there ever come a time when I will be able to come in? And Mahaprabhu responds, not until 1,000,000 births have passed. And Mukunda Datta at that time goes into ecstasy, thinking that after 1,000,000 births, then I will be able to come into in front of Mahaprabhu. And when the devotees report back to Mahaprabhu, Mukunda Datta's reaction to this, Mahaprabhu is so happy. He's so inspired. He says, yes, bring him in, bring him in, bring him in. So then at that time, he bestows so much mercy on Mukunda Datta. So Mukunda Datta is always with Mahaprabhu in Puri. He travels, he's there when Mahaprabhu takes sannyas in Katwa. He's there with Mahaprabhu at that time and performing kirtan at that time. Always he's with Mahaprabhu performing beautiful, sweet kirtan. So this is Mukunda Datta, and his brother is Vasudev Datta. His brother, in fact, is the father-in-law of Srivas Thakur. He's the father of Malini. And this is his house, Vasudev Datta, is the house where Narayani, who is the daughter of Srivas's eldest brother, goes and takes shelter, and where Vrindavan Das Thakur is born, at the house of Vasudev Datta. So that's the brother of Mukunda Datta. So all of these family relationships are just like in Vrindavan. In the Vrindavan pastimes, so many of the parikars, they're all related to one another. First or second cousin, third cousin, like that. So similar in Navadvip pastimes also. But Mukunda Datta is extraordinary personality and accompanies Mahaprabhu in Puri. So then we have Sridhara Pandit also on the same day, on Thursday. This is, we call him Kolavecha Sridhar. Kola, he would cultivate bananas and he would sell them. And half of the money he got from that, he would offer to Ganga Devi. He was very, very poor and very simple-hearted, very incredible personality. His place is just north of Mayapur. You can go and visit. One little monument is there, Sridhar Angan, and you can visit there. But Mahaprabhu would come regularly, daily, and he would barter and argue and even steal these cuttings of banana plants from Sridhar. He would cut the banana. When you take the banana trunk, you can take off the green, and inside is a white, very nice looking vegetable, and you can dice it and you can fry it, etc. So the Bengalis, they love this. So, but it costs practically nothing. And Mahaprabhu would argue about the price and even steal from Sridhar. Sridhar would complain, oh, please go to another person to get, you know, your banana cuttings. Don't always come to me. You just harass me and harass me. And Mahaprabhu sometimes would say, why are you offering to the Ganga? Don't you know that Ganga Devi is my servant? And Sridhar would block his ears. How are you saying such terrible things like that? But then when Sridhar eventually comes into the assembly where Mahaprabhu is seated on the throne in Srivas Thakur's house in Srivasangam, then he's giving so many benedictions, and they bring Sridhar in front of him. And at that time, Sridhar is complete amazement and astonishment to see this young Brahmin boy is none other than his divine Lord and Master. And at that time, Mahaprabhu is trying to give him a benediction. He says, please take a benediction, take a benediction. And Sridhar is saying, no, 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 I don't want anything, I don't want anything. And then he was offered all the 8 mystic cities. He was offered so much, but he didn't want anything. And then finally, on the insistence of Mahaprabhu, he said, all right, I just want one benediction, that that young Brahmin boy who came and harassed me will harass me eternally in that pastime, in that Leela that they performed together. So, of course, Mahaprabhu was very happy to bestow upon Sridhar. Sridhar, he goes to Puri also, and he's with all the Bengali devotees who go with Shivananda Sain, etc., and Advaitacharya every year. They go and attend the Rath Yatra. So Sridhar, he would go there also. So Sridhar is one of Nityananda's Dwadasa Gopals. He's the 12th of the Nityananda eternal parikars. He's Kusumasava in Krishna Leela, and he's a direct associate of Nityananda Prabhu. Nityananda, his 12 parikars are all spread out in Bengal in principle, and they're all assisting in his preaching. So certainly Sridhar is assisting in the preaching of his master, Nityananda Prabhu, and of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is Sridhar. And then there is Syamananda on Friday. So Syamananda Prabhu, we haven't got so much time, but Syamananda Prabhu is from Orissa, and a greatly exalted personality, his mother and father. His father was there, present at the time of Mahaprabhu taking sannyas and having his head shaved. And his father lamented so much that his father's friends began to call him Chaitanya Das from that time, because they saw his attachment to Mahaprabhu and his lamentation when Mahaprabhu took the renounced order So Syamananda was born in a most auspicious manner in Orissa, and he was born in about 1534, which is 4 years after the disappearance of Mahaprabhu. Is that right? Let me think. 1510 to 1534. Now Mahaprabhu leaves this world in 1534. He takes sannyas in 1510. So he leaves this world in 1534, 24 years later. So Syamananda is born 1536, 2 years after the departure of Mahaprabhu. So he never has darshan directly of Mahaprabhu. He's like the third generation, you can say, because the second generation really is Rupa, Sanatan, and Raghunath, is the 6 Goswamis. They are the ones who are carrying the current of Mahaprabhu's mission principally into the world. They're building the foundation and the platforms for all the other Vaishnavas to sit on, so to speak, for the next 1,000 years. These teachings of Rupa Goswami and Sanatan Goswami, Jiva Goswami, etc., Raghunata dasa Gosvami. So he comes in the third generation after Mahaprabhu and after even Krishnadas Kaviraj. And he comes at the same time in the same era as Narottam and Srinivas. These 3 personalities actually come under the tutelage of Jiva Goswami in Vrindavan. So Syamananda, he comes from Orissa and he seeks a guru, and he comes to Hriday Chaitanya, and he takes initiation from Hriday Chaitanya, who of course is the disciple of Gauridas Pandit. Gauridas Pandit is Subal in Krishna's Leela, a cowherd boy. So Hriday Chaitanya is also in that line, but Syamananda is not. He's actually Kanak Manjari. He's actually directly a Manjari of Sri Radhika. So Hriday Chaitanya, he sends Syamananda to Vrindavan on pilgrimage, and there he meets Jiva Goswami, takes shelter of Jiva Goswami, and Hriday Chaitanya is very happy. And then we know the pastime where Syamananda, he's sweeping the Kunj one day, and he finds the nupur, this ankle bell. Actually, it's Radhika's ankle bell that she has left there. And it's shining, it's blazing very brightly. So Syamananda understands this is something very sacred. So he holds on to that and he tells Jiva Goswami about it. And Jiva Goswami says, you should hold this and don't give it to anyone except the owner of this nupur, this bell. So the next day, while he's in Sevakunj, then Lalita and Vishaka, they come looking like just some Brijbasi cowherd girls, and they say, oh, our Swamini, she left, she dropped one of her ankle bells here last night. Have you found it? And he's called Dukhi Krishna at this time because his parents named him Dukhi Krishna. So this is before he has the name Syamananda. So Dukhi Krishna is saying, yes, I found that bell, but I will only give it to the person who owns that ankle bracelet. So then the Sakis, they say, no, you can give it to us. But he says, he's adamant. So then directly, like in trance, Shri Radhika comes and he's able to actually attach that nupur to her ankle bells. And then he has, at that time, that ankle bell, he touches it to his forehead and it leaves a particular mark of tilak, which is not like the Vaishnava tilak. It's a different tilak you see in Vrindavan. Many people, they wear this tilak following Syamananda Prabhu eventually. That was it. That was the name that Sri Radhika bestowed on Dukhi Krishnadas. She gives him that name at that time. She says, yes, you are my Syamananda. Because as I said, Syamananda is actually Kanak Manjari. He's a Manjari directly of Sri Radhika. So his consciousness has been woken up to appreciate his eternal identity. Previous to that, he didn't know his eternal identity. And then at that time, he goes back to Jiva Goswami, who celebrates and is very happy at this pastime. But his guru in Bengal understands or hears that now he's wearing different tilak, and he's even given himself a different name, Syamananda, becomes furious. And he comes there and he practically beats Syamananda. Syamananda doesn't object at all. He just takes the beating from his guru. But then Jiva Goswami, when he finds this out, he runs to Hridaya Chaitanya and explains, actually it was Radhika who bestowed this name on him directly. He reveals the whole pastime, and then Hridaya Chaitanya just is weeping and weeping in affection for Syamananda Prabhu. So it's a strange pastime. It's an interesting pastime that happens. It's happened to nobody else except Syamananda Prabhu. So then Syamananda and Srinivas and Narottam, they take the collection of books that Jiva Goswami has compiled from the teachings of Rupa and Sanatan. And with the help of Gopal Bhatta, they've edited and compiled all their books. And they want to bring them to Bengal to keep the movement alive in Bengal. They need these books. So they put them on the bullock cart, and you know the story, how they come into one king's kingdom. And he steals those books. He's called Bir Hambir. Bir Hambir. And Srinivasacharya, he remains in that kingdom to locate the books, and he ends up by finding the king. He makes the whole family devotees, and Srinivasacharya is a greatly empowered personality. He is also a manjari of Sri Radhika. I've forgotten. Does anybody know who Srinivasacharya is? I've forgotten for a minute. So Mani Manjari. Mani Manjari is Srinivasacharya. So Narottam is Vilas Manjari. So the thread of what I'm sort of presenting today comes, it is about these maidservants of Srimati Radhika who are bringing this conception of Mahaprabhu into this world. So Syamananda, he goes to Orissa to preach because that's his homeland, so to speak. And the history describes that after Mahaprabhu left this world, then Puri was invaded by the Mughals and the Partans, and they actually captured the temple of Jagannath and desecrated it. And the teachings of Mahaprabhu became somewhat fragile at that time within the land of Orissa. And then a series of kings and government changes, etc. And great disturbance was in Orissa. So the Vaishnava cult definitely was reduced. And Syamananda practically single-handedly resurrected the Vaishnava cult in Orissa with his great disciple called Rasikananda. Rasikananda was his most famous disciple. He had thousands of disciples, Syamananda Prabhu. And his most famous was Rasikananda, who came from a very aristocratic family and was able to influence these wealthy Muslim zamindars, etc. Their principal form of preaching was kirtan. They had exceptional kirtan, and they would hold huge, massive Mela festivals. They would plan these festivals almost for 12 months, and thousands and thousands and thousands of people would come to these festivals and hear these intoxicating kirtans led by Syamananda Prabhu and Rasikananda. And sometimes even Narottam would come. One time it's recorded that even Gauridas Pandit himself, he was still on the planet at that time, and Hridaya Chaitanya, they also came. So these great Vaishnavas would all meet and have these mega festivals to influence the populace back again to accept and embrace the Vaishnava teachings. So this is the greatness of Syamananda Prabhu. And all the preachers at that time, this is how they carried the current of Bhakti Ras into this world. We are all sitting here today, and we're experiencing, and we're able just to reach out and take these different books about Bhakti Ras very easily. But we should appreciate just for a moment, how is it manifested in our lives? How is the current come through historically? So when we consider all these different personalities and how they're all linked together and how much endeavor they gave their life and soul for these teachings to be put into the world, so we can take great inspiration to support this mission today, because still this mission of Vaishnavism is fragile. It's still not in every single household. They may be chanting Hare Krishna, but how educated are the general people? Even here in Navadvip, where I stay, hardly anyone really knows the teachings of Bhaktivedanta Thakur, etc. Very, very minimal. They love to chant Hare Krishna, but they don't really know the teachings of that. They don't know about Bhakti Ras, this jewel that Mahaprabhu has come to give to the world. Mahaprabhu has come to give this particular, he's tasting himself the moods of Sri Radhika's separation from Krishna. He's acting as the Ashraya in this incarnation. And he's showing us the nature of this Bhakti Ras, or particularly in separation from Krishna. What did Radhika experience for 100 years? The other day you heard Ashram Maharaj describing the beautiful pastime of Uddhav Khyari. And I was speaking also a few weeks ago about that part. But this is when Radhika is for 100 years in separation. So what is the nature of that Mohanakya Mahabhav? So Rupa Goswami is describing it perfectly, but Mahaprabhu is experiencing it in Puri. And Raghunata dasa was actually witnessing that through Swarup Damodar and Rai Ramananda. And then the teachings of this Rupa Goswami was going to him. And then all of these teachings were described clearly so that we can also access this jewel of Mahaprabhu. It's not a small thing at all. It's not just like an ancient scripture that's been there for, it's once in every 8,640,000,000 years, this opportunity comes around to experience and know what is Bhakti Ras. It's an exceptionally unique gift that has almost never been offered before, because it's such a long time in earthly years, 8 billion years. It's such a long time. So these personalities, Syamananda, Mukunda Datta, Sridhara Pandit or Kolavecha Sridhar, and especially Raghunata dasa, these personalities we're going to be celebrating this week on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So we can just contemplate who are these. I haven't really gone very much into the description of these personalities. There is a lot more information, not so much, but there is some, because a lot of this hasn't been recorded. At that time, the Muslim rulers were very much strong in Bengal, and there wasn't a lot of Vaishnava literature that was recorded. There is some, but it's still locked up in the Bengali language. We're waiting for different translators to open this up more fully. So we have a great future of literature actually about these extraordinary personalities. But it's very inspiring for us today to see, where do we fit into this current? Yes, we have been privileged to hear about these truths. Now, how are we going to incorporate them, first of all, with some realization into our own lives by our own practice and bhajan and sadhana, etc. If that's not really happening, then how can anything else really happen? So that has to take place. And then how are we going to package them in our own unique ways to distribute to the people for posterity? How is this line? It does depend on us, because we all have independence. It's not by magic this is just going to happen. Yes, Mahaprabhu's mission, it's going to happen by, no, it's not going to happen by magic. If Rupa Goswami hadn't carried those teachings, how would they have come? If Raghunath hadn't pushed those teachings through his writing of Vilap Kusumanjali or Manashiksha, etc., other books that this Prema Bhoga Manda that Prabhupada Bhaktivedanta Swami, he quotes in Chaitanya Charitamrita by Raghunata dasa. Such beautiful sentiments. How are we going to, half the time we're just concerned with our own mental states, etc., and our own identities in the world and how to go forward. It's not easy, because we're trying to import this Eastern way of life into the Western world. It doesn't really fit compatibly, does it? It's not automatically a comfortable sort of smooth, streamlined fit. You know, walking around in a pink skirt and holding a white handbag or whatever, you know, what people see with this, what's this mud on your face and so on. I mean, it's very hard for them to accept, you know, the dress for a start. And then even to get beyond the dress, that to actually, God is just not our order supplier, but actually you can come to a place where you can actually please God. You can actually serve God. I mean, how exciting proposition is that? From just asking with your hand out, oh, give me my daily bread, but turn it right around and say, oh, dear Lord, how can I please you today? What can I do for you today? This is like extraordinary. And then when we even start to explain to someone who knows even that, to explain them who is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he's actually God himself and he's come to taste himself. How are you going to put that into the Western world? That God wants to taste himself. God wants to taste his own beautiful sweetness, his sweet qualities through his great devotee. These are extraordinary teachings. We have been able to assimilate them simply because we've absorbed ourselves in the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Don't underestimate the power of how the Mahamantra has influenced our consciousnesses today. We're all able to sit here quite comfortably. And yes, we know that this is the identity of Mahaprabhu. We don't have any problem with it, you know, because we've listened to the teachings and we've chanted Hare Krishna. It's the power of the Mahamantra itself that has given us the ability to understand these teachings. Without the power of the mantra, we wouldn't understand them, these conceptions. So this week in particular, with these great personalities manifesting, we can remember and appreciate the amount of endeavor they took to give us what we have today. Just like yesterday I described was Baladev Vidyabhushan, his disappearance day, I think. Where's Yadav gone? Yadav's jumped off. Okay, I think it was the disappearance day yesterday, if anyone can correct me. Of Baladev Vidyabhushan. Disappearance day, yeah.
Yes.
So he was trying to establish Sri Radhika outside of Vrindavan. You know, this is what, 200 years after Mahaprabhu? After Mahaprabhu has left this world? So this required great expertise, and it required even this Basya, this Govinda Basya, to manifest from the pen of Baladev Vidyabhushan. So all these extraordinary personalities are there for us to take inspiration from. They are rooting for us, so to speak. They want to give us this mercy and this kripa. They are sitting there hungry to actually distribute it to us. It's like a mother to a child. They want to give the child the very best. These are our life-giving mothers, these personalities. That they're ready to give us all of the realization of these teachings. They're just looking for the one requirement that is needed from our side. What's that? Greed, lobha, enthusiasm. If that lobha can be maintained, and that lobha can be maintained simply by the chanting of the Mahamantra. Greed for this, and hearing from the different Vaishnavas, Harikatha, about Mahaprabhu, about these personalities, about Raghunata dasa, about Mukunda Datta, about Kolavecha Sridhar. Who were they? How did they live in this world? It's fascinating topics for us to immerse ourselves in. Because if we just immerse ourselves in the local demonic, you know, gymnastics that are going on the planet at the moment, it'll become a little bit dry, and we may even become fearful. We may come under their, their desire to make everyone afraid. I mean, that is the quality of a demon. We understand this blanket is there, of demonic qualities are there in Kali Yuga, but still we have this amazing power of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his teachings. And if we immerse ourselves there, an enormous fire will erupt that will just cover those demonic qualities in a moment in our own minds. They'll just be shriveled up to nothing. So we should take heart and encouragement and glorification in these remarkable personalities who are going to be able to glorify this week. I mean, this is like a living reality. It's not a historic type of philosophy or religion, whatever. It's like a living moment to moment. It's our breath. It's our life breath, is to connect with these personalities and pray for their mercy, to please have the steadiness of consciousness to progress forward in service ultimately to Srimati Radhika. Because all of these personalities that we've described even today, Rati Manjari, Raghunata dasa, Mukunda Datta, an eternal associate from Vrindavan, Madhubrat, and Kusumasava, this Sridhar, a cowherd boy in Vrindavan, and Syamananda, Kanak Manjari in Vrindavan, all from Vrindavan Leela. We are serving that Vrindavan Leela today, particularly under Srimati Radhika, like Bhaktivedanta, like all of our line, they're all Manjaris, as we've said so many times, particularly Bhaktivedanta Thakur, Kamala Manjari, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Naini Manjari, Bhaktivedanta Keshavraj, Vinod Manjari, our Gurudev, Raman Manjari. So all these personalities, all serving Srimati Radhika. How can I serve Srimati Radhika also? How can I be a respectable follower of this line and contribute to this current being injected more strongly and more fully? Because this is a remarkable time historically for this planet, no doubt. Okay, Prabhus. So I think I've done my time. I've gone over time. So thank you all very much for your attention and listening. I hope I've said something of value about these remarkable personalities to inspire us in our own lives, in our own places and countries, etc. How can we contribute rather than just be sitting here with our hands out, looking to take something, but how can we give something? Jai, Vanchakalpa Turubhyascha, Kripa Sandhavevacha, Patitanam Pavanibhyo, Vaishnavaya Namo.
Jai Maharaj, Dandavad.
Dandavats, Tamalji. Oh, you're still there, Tamal. You stuck it out the whole way. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's just about midnight.
Yeah, it looks pretty dark on your screen too.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow, you hung on. I'm
Very
impressed that you stayed so long. Dandavats, Tamalji. Haribol. Haribol, Tamal. Anybody have, we probably have time for a moment's question.
Yeah,
anything?
Well, Maharaj, you hear me?
Yes, who is speaking? I can look. Oh, Prakash. Got you, got you. Okay.
So Syamananda Prabhu, he was, first of all, he thought he was like a Gopa in Krishna Lila. And
yes,
in Jiva Goswami's association, he came to discover this ankle bell. There was an ankle bell, yeah, of
yes, bell,
yeah.
Yeah.
So then he understood his real Swarup. So I heard Gurudev saying once that when the Swarup is not fixed, then it can change. And he said also, yeah, I heard him say that, but I didn't understand what he meant. And he said also that with the sadhaka, because our Swarup is not manifest yet, he can shape it. So how do you explain? Because
you're asking me like a hot question. This is like a hot topic, you know.
yeah.
But I'm ready to go into it. But by nature, Yadav's laughing because we had this whole discussion in Sardinia a couple of days ago.
Okay.
But the nature of the jiva is fixed. Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nitya Das. We are an eternal servant of Krishna. That is fixed. But the actual staibhav, your identity, your dress, etc., there is different discussions about that. I don't know if I really want to get into it now because it's very thick.
No, there's no need to go into details, just general.
But in general, my understanding today, I'll share with you my understanding, and I'm just speaking from my personal perspective. So there will be people who will object to what I have to say, but still I will say it. Because Srila Gurudev spoke to me directly about this. I asked him in a conversation, I asked him a question at the end of a class. I said, you're trying to tell us how high is the mood of Uddhav in relationship to going to Vrindavan, his staiva, but he was a Jnani Bhakta. And you're trying to tell us that we are higher, we have a higher potential than Uddhav. You understand?
Yeah.
So Gurudev, he took me, I've even got a photograph of him actually answering this question. And he said to me, you are like clay. I can mold you however I want.
Exactly.
He said this directly to me. So from that, I've understood it's both, Prabhu. It's fixed and it's not fixed in a sense. It's fixed in the sense your inclination towards Madhurya or to serve Sri Radhika is fixed. But your actual acceptance of the whole conception is up to your independence, because you never lose your independence. Even in the very final moment in Goloka Vrindavan, you still have your independence. We always, because without independence, we cannot love. It has to be our independent choice to actually embrace the lotus feet of Sri Radhika. It has to be, pure love has to be coming from the independent heart, doesn't it? Otherwise, it's not love. It can't be imposed. You can't impose prem on the heart. Prem is already kriti sadhya bhavet sadhya bhavasa sadhanabhita nitya siddhyasya bhavasya. It's eternally residing in the heart. Prakatamriti sadhyate, in potential. So my understanding today has evolved, is all I can say to you. It's not as fixed as it was even 1 year ago, when Shamrani Didi and myself and Nemi Maharaj and Kishori and Sudevi, we were very disturbed by one sannyasi who was speaking like this in Bhaja some years ago, very respectable sannyasi. And we objected because we had heard Gurudev say directly, you know, same soil, same gardener, same water, same sun, and the seed is the seed. Everything is within the seed. It's fixed. But in fact, there is some area where Jiva Goswami describes that there is some area where we have to make a choice. And that choice comes from our association. If you are in the association of Rasik Bhaktas, Sri Radhika lovers, so to speak, Bhaktivinoda Thakur Dara, the current of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, then you are going to catch this greed for seva to Radhika. But if you're not in that, how can you catch it? It just logically makes so much sense, you know, that something has to come from our side. Nothing is just going to be magical, just dropping some powder on our head. Oh, yes, you are like this forever. Because we have this independence. So I cannot explain this shastrically as perhaps someone like Prem Prayojan Prabhu, he can explain. He also understands this fully, the way I'm saying it, but with more praman. Because he's been able to read, because he reads Hindi. I can't read Hindi or Bengali. So I can't read those particular texts that the sannyasi was speaking about, who put forward this conception. So my conception is that there is some, you know, our association matters a lot. You can decide, Prabhu, what sort of association you want to have for the rest of your life. If you want to have Rasik Bhaktas association, it probably indicates that your Swarup, your intrinsic Staibhav, is more inclined that route. If that is your desire, you have a choice. If you're more inclined to, you know, discuss other topics with pundits and scholars, etc., about other aspects of the scripture, then what will that indicate about your Staibhav? Nevertheless, this whole topic is like over our heads unless you understand what your Staibhav is to begin. You have an inclination about it. Gurudev has said that if you come to the camp of Mahaprabhu, it's almost assured that you are in Madhurya Ras. But what type of Madhurya Ras? Is that as a cowherd boy? Is that in Vatsalya Bhav? Or is that in Gopi Bhav? Manjari Bhav? What type is that to be? So I don't know that it's conclusive. So I've said something, you know, and you can just sift out what you find is relevant. What do you think, Prakashat?
No, I think it's good, very good. I had also some inclination towards what you were saying also, like the Guru is fashioning something. He's not changing your swarup, but he's fashioning something in your heart. Actually, this sannyasi you were speaking about, he actually answered, I heard him. It's both. He said it also.
Yes, 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 yes. That's the reconciliation. Exactly that. It's both. That's the answer. It's both fixed and it's not fixed at the same time.
Yeah, it's beyond our head. I agree with you.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a chintya. That's why there should never be any debate or discussion unless you're self-realized on this particular topic. We hear the different truths and I was talking to this devotee the other day in Sardinia, and my conclusion, I don't really think about this a great deal. I think more about how can I please my Gurudev?
Yeah.
How can I think about how can I please Srimati Radhika? Is it possible for me to even think like that? You know, what can I possibly do to please Krishna even? I'm kind of going in that direction. But it's like I said at the very beginning of this talk today, that these conceptions are incredibly high. They're extraordinarily, you know, sensitive and soft and delicate. They're in the deepest part of the heart. That's why Mahaprabhu's mission is not, I wouldn't say 1,000,000% assured of success necessarily, because it's up to us and we have this independent choice right to the very end. Without this independence, you know, well, we have this independence, and that's a jewel. It's described in Jivadhamma very clearly, this jewel of independence. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
I think it's like a personal appreciation ultimately. Of course, we have Shastra, but when we try to, this is what some devotees were cautioning with the Jiva book that Shamrani put out. I helped with that book. You also, I think, helped with it.
Yes.
Crafted. Yeah. And we proved, etc., etc. But you can't case it in such boundaries. You can't put so much walls on it. It's a little more fluid than that. There is more to it than that.
I think that what Syamarani was trying to do is to prevent young devotees to be attracted to the Babaji line. Absolutely.
And that's very definitive. And that's, you know, that book is tremendous. The book that she's done is tremendous, but it's not as defined as it's presented in that book. Ultimately, I'm just saying to you as a mature devotee, that's what my understanding is today.
She asked me actually when she was doing that book, she asked me if I knew some quotation from Srila Jiva Goswami in his Sandarbhas about this issue. And I told her that exactly like you were saying, that sometimes he seems to be saying that it is through the association that this swarup is developing. So in other words, he didn't really address the issue. It is not too clear.
Yeah, it just makes sense. I think it will become clear as we mature and perhaps even have some direct realization of this.
That will help.
I just want to conclude with one final thing that I was describing about the mission of Mahaprabhu. And at the end of the 39th chapter in Jivadhamma, Vijay Kumar, he questions Guru Babaji Goswami about the different services of the different devotees. What are they going to carry into this world? And I just want to read a little bit because it's very insightful in connection with what I've said up to date. And Gopal Goswami, he's describing that in the writings of Sri Rupa Goswami, he's illustrated Rasa Tattva extensively. Since Mahaprabhu entrusted him with this particular responsibility, he has not explained how rasa acts while one renders seva. Understand what I've just said? Rupa Goswami is defining rasa tattva, but he's not giving the actual prayojan. Then Goswami says, Sri Das Goswami, Raghunata dasa Gosvami accomplished this task in his writings, which are based on the Kadacha, the notes of Swarup Damodar. So this is just a little window into the different sevas that these particular personalities were gifted by Mahaprabhu to carry into this world. So we can appreciate, this is what I've really been speaking about. This is what I wanted to present in this whole hour, was the appreciation of the gifts that all these acharyas are carrying for us to become inspired by, to carry forward ourselves in our own areas of seva. So he describes at the end of chapter 39, right at the very end, you can read it for yourselves. He talks about Rai Ramananda, what he actually gave, and he talks about Jiva Goswami, what he actually gave, Gopal Bhatta, what he gave, Sanatan Goswami, what he gave, many different personalities at the end of chapter 39. So that just adds a little bit extra to this presentation today. Okay, Prabhu, I'm going to go. My phone has died, lack of juice. Okay, thank you all so much for coming today. Dhanyavad. Haribol, 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 Dhanyavad, Haribol, Hare Krishna.
Dandavad pranams. Thank you, Maharaji.
Dhanyavad, Dhanyavad.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Manjalali, are you going to sign off, Manjalali, or is that considered signed off?
If all the devotees, said everything, and sure, I will
Sign off.
close the call then, afterwards.
Okay.
Haribo,
Thank you.
Maharaj.
Dhanyavad Kunjabi Hari. Dhanyavad Kunjabi Hari. Haribol, Haribol. Karna ki jai. Bihari ki jai. Dhanyavad.
Oh, thank you.
Haribol Yasheshwari. Haribol. 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 Dhanyavad. Hare Krishna. Haribol.
Great to hear you again.
Nice to see you again. Nice to see you.
Haribol.
Sitting there. Haribol. Haribol. I'm going to leave. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Oh,
Dhanyavad. Hare
Haribol.
Krishna. Haribol. Haribol.
Haribol.